meeting of this year's Planning Board Advisory Committee. Last time, if you recall, we kind of went through the key charts of this committee and also focusing budget and finance, did an overview about operating and capital budget and kind of lay out the general ground about the fiscal condition as well as some basics there. Today, our focus will be the capital needs of the county that's covered education, public safety, roads, streets, and recreation parks, and different aspects there. We have multiple speakers today, so we try to squeeze that into a short kind of window and then be able to give the audience an idea about different aspects of the work the county is doing, and which is always difficult to meet all those competing needs on the capital side. In terms of funding, if you recall, last time we talked about the primary source of funding for capital projects of the county is general obligation bond, and once we issue bond, we use 20 years typically to pay principal and interest in our operating budget. And we talked the last time that throughout the years, the geo capacity has been shrinking for two reasons. One is historically there's sometimes because of needs actually the county authorized a lot of bonds, and as a result that it's sort of into today and future's capacity because these are existing that you have to pay. And also that's coupled with the fact that the county's overall revenue growth has been slowing down, which gives you less total resources to use to support those debt service. So as a result, the geo authorization last year was only $89.5 million. That was the lowest in the past decade because of the condition we're talking about. And looking forward, the committee is going to have the chance to discuss in more details in the next few weeks on that in the future. But we're looking at the capacity probably at even less level because of the reason we're talking about as the time continues. There are other sources designated to capital projects. Unfortunately, most of them has been experiencing the same trend and even in a more severe manner. For example, both school surcharge before the recent tax rate raise bill passed by the council, both school surcharge and road excise tax, they are completed. For example, road excise tax, that's a living tax. I think in the past 15 years, we authorized, I think it's about 130 million debt from that resource. But going forward, the next 10 years, the capacity is zero. And actually, we don't even have the needed revenue to support existing debt. School surcharge, the same thing. It's not for the sake of those reasons, tax change bill there. And for transfer tax, it's partially designated to recreational parks and fire buildings and facilities, and partially designated to school, and also the housing programs. Just give you an example about recreational park. I think we have colleagues here to talk about the recreation park needs on that. That designated transfer tax for recreation parks has supported over 100 million debt in the past 15 years, and also about 3 million cash payable per year. But going forward, the maximum looks like we can support is only 1 or 2 million cash payable. That's it. So that's just one example of looking about the overall funding constraint when it comes to capital. So with that quick opening, I will invite different people to talk about the capital side, starting with Lincoln from Community College.
I'm Lynn Coleman. I'm the Vice President of Administration and Finance at Howard Community College, so I thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about our capital budget. Just to tell you a little bit about the college is an open access institution, so anyone can attend the college. You have to qualify for various experience readiness levels, and so if you aren't efficient in your level that you want to enter into, we do have remedial courses to help people get through that. Our mission is basically providing pathways to success. We try to keep it very short, and our vision is a place to discover the greatness in yourself and others. And we have our mnemonic for our values, which is INSPIRE, so innovation, nurturing, sustainability, partnerships, integrity, respect, excellence, and service are our values, and our goals are to assure student success and completion in lifelong learning, organizational excellence, and building and sustaining partnerships. Our campus has about 120 acres right next to the hospital in downtown Columbia. And other sites that we have is the Effort Training Center and also our Laurel College Center, which is a partnership with Prince George's Community College. We have 2 LEED Gold buildings, and that is our Health Sciences building and our Science and Engineering building. And we opened our renovated space for our Academic Commons and Howard Hall this past summer, and we're hoping to get LEED Gold for that. Just to give you a sense of our enrollment, we have almost 30,000 students in the credit area, about 14,444, and then non-credit 15,800. And most of our students are actually part-time, so even though, so you can see 66% really are there going part-time. So let's just talk a little bit about our capital budget. Every year, the state does a space needs availability for instructional space. And so you can see our, you can see up here that we have our head count and what the state has projected us to grow in FY '24. We're supposed to grow about 22%, and then in FY '29, 43%. So these are projections that the state has given us. On our, they look at our space needs based on the number of students they're anticipating to be there, and you can see we currently have an instructional space deficit of about 50,000 square feet, and within the next 10 years it's supposed to rise to about 189,000 square feet. So that's how they determine. The state actually takes, we get our funding 50% from the county for capital and 50% from the state. And so in order for the state to approve any project, they look at what your space deficits are and what the needs are on your campus, and then before they would even consider a particular project. And then we have to go before the state to also lobby for our buildings as well. So in next year's budget, our math and athletics building is our main project that we're looking at in the upcoming budget. We're asking for $14,874, and that includes completion of the design. We started the design this past year, and we want to complete the design, and then we want to start a little bit of the construction. But the building itself, the whole complex, is going to be about $101,000. $101 billion, I'm sorry. And we're going to do it in 4 phases. So the reason we need the math building, right now the math building is located in the Hickory Ridge building, which originally was built as an office building for general physics, and that was in 1982. And so that was built in 1982. And then what had happened in 2013, the state passed what's known as the Career Readiness Act, meaning that all community college students have to take math to graduate, and they have to take it in the first 24 credits in order to graduate. And so that meant our math programs are really stressed right now because we need the space for those students. And that building in particular, the math building, shares that building with continuing education, and they really are very short on space. And so that's why we're looking to put the math project along with the athletics complex together. We had started the design. The athletic building was actually built in 1969, and when that opens, it will, the old building would have been about 55 years old, and it really does need replacement because it is in, we've tried our best to keep it up to par, but you know, with a building that old, it is hard for to keep it up to par. So that's where we're looking to phase this out over a number of years. This year we'll have about 9,000 in construction, and the remaining portion will be for the design on the building to complete the design. In addition to that, we're just asking for systemic renovations. This is our deferred maintenance. The deferred maintenance area includes The first category, roof replacements, and then we also have interior improvements, which is for our carpet, major building carpet replacements for a whole building. And then we're looking at ADA upgrades, also our turf and athletic resurfacing, because that's over 10 years old, that hasn't been resurfaced. Our AV upgrades for the buildings, IT upgrades, and also cafe on the quad upgrades as well. We've been, throughout the building, our campus, we've been looking at phased upgrades for our public restrooms, and also the cable television upgrades, and the athletic field area also needs some spectator seating, so we have that. And then we also have some a storage area for the theater, and then signage for the campus. What we do when we look at our projects, we prioritize them. So what's critical, what isn't critical, and so we have this category that we've determined for priority. We look at life safety, ADA, building code compliance. And then number two, it's something that can maybe wait a year or two, so then it's near the operations in the near future that we want to complete. And then in category three, it could be 2 to 5 years. So most of the projects that we have put on here are in the 1 or 2 category. And you can see on here, this is our phasing for this particular, for the project that we have. So the math athletics building, that would be completed by 2024. The systemic renovations, they're ongoing every year. And so we continue to upgrade, have deferred maintenance every year. So that's mainly our capital projects. Just to talk a little bit about this, shows a picture of the math athletics, a concept design for the math athletics building. And then we also have our master plan that we're building from. So what this, the darker color buildings on here, the math athletics building is the one that's shown here. It's probably not going to end up looking like that. We just have it on the master plan as a placeholder for that. And then there are future buildings shown on here, but those won't be until a number of years after that we were looking for those.
Which color are the future buildings?
The future buildings are the darker ones too. So the math athletics building is right here, and then 3 and 4, number 2 up there are the darker color. That's the future buildings that would occur on campus. So just to talk a little bit about the college, our return on investment, we have an economic impact study, and our graduates' earnings increased about $12,000 annually over the course of their, other than getting a GED, beyond the GED. Over their working career, this increase amounts to about $428,000, and it's about a 4.6 return for taxpayers, and about 5,000 jobs that are generated from our campus. Outcomes, with the state completion, we have stressed that we want to increase our outcomes for students. So over the last year, since 2007, we've had 181% increase in transfer degrees, 186% increase in career associate degrees. Our higher graduation rate within the last within 2 years has increased 168%. And 100% of our, we've had 100% growth rate over the last 10 years. We are the fastest growing community college in Maryland. We have far exceeded all the other community colleges. And we, on the National Community College Benchmarking Project, our first time full-time students transfer in the 79th percentile in the first 3 years. Other things, this past year, the college won the Malcolm Baldrige Award. We're very proud of that because only 3 colleges, I mean, this is 4 years community colleges ever in the nation have ever won this. And in March, we will get our award at the National Harbor Center, so we're very happy about that. And I don't know if there are any questions.
Question. How are the funding allocations determined? So the county, it shows that the county is 50% and the state is 50% for the math building, and then
It wasn't, all right, the state only pays for buildings, they don't pay, well, they had started this last year, they were going to give us money for deferred maintenance. And we may get that, but we've heard that might go away. So, but in the past, they have not funded deferred maintenance on our campus. So it's only the major buildings that the state is paid for.
On your
It's just-
chart,
She's gonna do the capital.
prioritized
at the end.
FY21 capital
That's
budget
PowerPoint is already
innovation.
there.
I'm just kind of
Okay.
wondering,
Just
on
do
the
the
notes
state
you indicate
Yeah. She said she's
items
doing that
1,
one
2, and
by
3 are critical needs, but they're listed as funding priorities. One of them is ADA compliance, which you usually put under priority 1. So I was wondering if
We do feel our campus is ADA compliant, and so some of the things that are in the priority 2 are nice to have, but it's not critical that they be done in that first priority that year.
Can you talk a little bit about your enrollment projections? I saw your slide that said, you know, the majority
Those
is
enrollment
part-time.
projections actually come from the state of Maryland, so they look at the county population, the high school population, what's growing, and that's how they determine the projections that we used in evaluating our building. So, and they do it for all of the community colleges.
I always like to check to make sure it didn't like stop.
And do you have a split on county residents versus non-residents in your population?
I would say about 75% of our population are county residents, and then the remaining are out of county and out of state. And we have what's known as statewide programs, and so students come to our campus because they can't get that program in their county, and so that's where the out-of-county piece would come from.
So 75% of the 30,000 are county residents?
It's 75% of the credit, and really non-credit, it's primarily 100%, but I guess I was really referring to credit when I was talking.
Okay, so good news, bad news. Good news is Mark Stromdale will be surprised. I was actually going to let you go before me today.
Well, I thought you were going to give my presentation.
No. So I prepared the whole presentation for operational capital, so I'm not going to go through all the slides you just saw me go through. I'm just going to talk about capital, so that's the good news. It'll be pretty brief. The library has just again won the Howard King Library System, as you may know, in 2013. We're the top library in North America, and we've got several accolades over the year. We actually this year were just awarded last month, the 5-star Library System of the Year. We're the only 5-star library in the state of Maryland, so we're very proud about that. We also won Gold Award winner, the For Now campaign, American Civic Awards. We've won several accolades every year. We continue to exceed expectations and deliver the highest library service and education in the country and in the state. For the library system, we've got 2 million visits, 8.2 million items borrowed. As you can see, 1.2 research interactions. That means that's the number of people coming up and asking for research assistance. And we've had over 300,000 classes. We're still focused on our pillars. The pillars are the self-directed education, research and assistance, and enlightening experiences. On Tuesday, I'll go through all the slides. You're going to see me circle through real quickly, but I'm going to talk, while I'm going forward, talk a little bit about the capital projects. We'll cover all this on Tuesday. So I'm going to fast forward to the capital projects. We have six branches, 7 including our administrative branches. Our branches, most of them have been renovated over the years or improved. We do have a couple of items on this year's capital project. One of the biggest ones is for the Downtown Central, the Business and Arts Education Center. As you know, downtown is all being built with the Howard Hughes and the whole metropolitan, Meriwether area is being renovated. The downtown branch that we have now, Central Branch, is actually slated to be replaced. And we are going to have in the Meriwether District a new branch. That branch is being designed or discussed right now. We're working with the Housing Commission. They are the lead on that branch. We are a library system with affordable and market rate housing above us. So we're just starting that process with the Housing Commission, and actually we've picked a developer and architectural team. So it's very, very early on, but what we do know is that for the planning for the project, the library's component of that project is going to be $3.4 million. That'll take us through the planning and design and through the construction, but that piece for just the planning part. We have not come up yet with what the number is for the full construction, but this is the planning component that we're looking for in the FY21 time frame. The Housing Commission pays for their own planning, so this is just the library. The other thing that's in the 21 budget is $550,000. We're asking for the continuation of our Glenwood branch. Our Glenwood branch is 20 years old. It's in Western Howard County. It has not been renovated or seen any renovations over the years. Right, we need things to include a STEM education center. We need improved study rooms. We need to pretty much go through the branch and make it meet the current needs and try to map what we're doing for the rest of the county. In that branch specifically, the carpet needs to be replaced. We are adding another conference room up there, so we need to add a wall. But we've already been allocated $730,000 in the prior fiscal year. Based on with the assistance of DPW and the architects, we have determined that there's another $550,000 that's needed. Last but not least, it says FY22 on this slide, but it's actually FY21. It is still in our budget for this year. That's $285,000 that we're looking for a site survey. We did a community focus group, and over the years this has continued to come up. We have pushed out the Southwest branch several times. We're not looking to build the Southwest branch. This is funding that we are requesting that would enable us to plan, do a site survey, make a determination of what's really possible out in Western Howard County. And then I put 2023 in there. If we actually went forward, found a site, we wouldn't be looking at actually doing any work in the Western Howard County into the Southwest branch until 23. With that said, it's a very good presentation, but we are very small. Our whole fiscal ask for the capital projects are 4.2 for this upcoming year. Are there any questions? I hope they'll go that way. Hopefully Holly took note on that. So thank you.
And next week, as Angela just mentioned, that next week is the day before operating budget discussion. So all the education will come back and talk about the operating challenges, needs, and also strategies there. So we'll start with the yeah. By the way, as I already sent to email yesterday, our colleagues in the school system are out here to discuss chapter books. They're in the state trying to lobby for state funding, which is critically needed for our capital projects for the school system there. Plus, next week when you're here to talk about operating, they will add it to the capital system.
So before I get started, of course, I appreciate being able to speak in front of you today, since this is my first time speaking in front of you. Did you want to? No, I purposely.
Oh.
Yeah, so
So we have all the focus too.
Dramatic effect.
I'm Mark DeLuca.
Flashlight on his chin.
I'm in charge of environmental services and public works. And what I wanted to talk to you today was two topics, two programs that we have in environmental services. One of them is the Ellicott City flood mitigation, and the other one is our watershed protection. And so now I will turn to this. The Ellicott City flood mitigation program. First of all, you need a little background. Of course, I'm assuming that everyone knows that in July of 2016, we experienced in Howard County 6 inches of rain in 2 hours. And that caused a flood in Old Town, Ellicott City. And then 22 months later, in May, we had a second rainstorm that dropped 6 inches of rain in about 3 hours, and that caused the second flood. And this next slide that I want to show is actually some video of the flood taken from a resident who I believe was on the second floor. If I can get this to work. Now what I want you to notice is the depth of the water. It's about 6-7 feet. Also the velocity of this water and how strong this water looks. And then what you're going to see up here at Kaplan's is that the water blows out the very front of the facade. There you can see it. So water is coming out from behind the buildings, pushing everything out. And of course, the first floors were destroyed, and this is what it looked like just moments later. This was a flash flood, and as opposed to, like a river flooding very slowly. These flash floods are very destructive. They're becoming much more common, and not only in Maryland, but nationally. And the new term for these types of flash floods are urban flooding. They happen in urban areas. They wipe out small parts of the town. And so it's something that can reoccur. Now we talked about this was like a 1,000-year flood, but we have to throw that notion out because what we've seen with changing weather patterns, severity of storms, where we have high intensity, short duration storms, a lot of communities have suffered from this. And just most recently, if you were following the news, Montgomery County and DC just had a flood last year, or maybe 6 months ago, where the western part of town and Montgomery County flooded out as well. However, it wasn't as well documented as Ellicott City, and certainly it wasn't as dramatic from the residents and merchants' point of view. So this is the kind of destruction that we saw just moments after. This was the next day, but just moments after the flood. So you see a lot of building damage in the top corner there. The water, because of the velocity and the amount of water, just scoured out the whole base of that building. And of course, special ops from fire and rescue, they had to go in and support the buildings. This building on the my left-hand side, your right-hand side, top corner, that's the brewery, and completely wiped out the bottom supports of that structure. We had to support it similarly with special ops, and here you see a lot of sandbags. We were trying to reestablish the wall, and then these were all in the 2016 flood. The 2018 flood, of course, this is Ellicott Mills Drive. That used to be a pipe under the road that would carry the water. The stream went, traversed underneath, and that was completely blown out. There's two pictures, one on the ground perspective and one from the air. And you can see also how much of the infrastructure was damaged, because in, so you can see pipes like here, gas lines, water and sewer, and that's another gas line. We were very lucky. Even though we did have ruptures, we didn't have any fires, and we lost water. So when you lose water and you have a gas line that's ruptured, or even electrical lines sparking, there's always a risk of, big fires, because you can't turn the water back on. It's just not there. So this was definitely a situation that needs to be remedied as quickly as possible. So what was the cost and economic impact of the damages from the 2016 storm? So here we can see that the county recovery effort, it cost us about $9.4 million, which was all money we never planned to spend. And we had to have that money up front, which meant that we had to divert money from other public works programs to put the money to forward fund this. Now, I will say that some of that was eligible for FEMA reimbursement. We're still trying to get some of that money from FEMA. But you have to have that money up front in order to get the contractors, pay the contractors, and the materials and the engineering consultant, because you don't know when you're going to get your money from FEMA. It would be nice if we got it quickly, but it needed to be forward funded. There were 246 vehicles damaged in the storm. Main Street was closed 69 days. There were 146 buildings impacted, and a study by the Jacob France Institute estimated that the economic impact was $42 to $67 million. There was one loss of life. Now, in the 2018 storm, we had county recovery effort cost $23 million. We had 120 vehicles damaged. The street was closed for 24 days. The only thing I can say there is we got a little bit better at getting the street open. We were a little bit more practiced because this was only 22 months later. Buildings impacted, 180, and a loss of life. We lost another person, and directly. But there was a death indirectly. So there were actually three lives lost over the course of these two storms. So, so what it came up that, what could be done to minimize it? It kind of fell to Public Works. Well, what can you do? We developed a mitigation strategy for the town and for this area of Ellicott City that consisted of a series of retention and conveyance improvements. And what I mean by that is, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But so this is the area, this I really can't show this very well without really showing it very large. But at the top, let me see. That's Ellicott City right here. And this is 29, it runs kind of diagonally through here. And all these blue streams, they run and they all converge at one point in Ellicott City, and then this is the Patapsco River. So that was part of the challenge. And so when I talk about retention, it's where we store water in what we call the upper reaches of the watershed. And then conveyance is where, there are constrictions moving down the streams, and they constrict the water, and the water pops out and floods the road, and the road's a perfect conduit. It's nice and smooth, and it picks up velocity, and the water then tries to find its way back into the stream bed, but it might go through someone's front door to do that, or someone's business, and we saw a lot of that in both storms. So we came up with this series of projects, and along with our engineering consultants and the Army Corps of Engineers. And we developed these 8 projects that you see here. And of course, you see 9 if you were really counting. And that's because Main Street renovations, they weren't necessarily included in the mitigation strategy, but it's an amount of money that needs to be included when we talk about a strategy for Ellicott City, trying to mitigate it. Because we need to bring those buildings back, and we need actually to modify those buildings so that they don't really get in the way anymore. But these 8 projects, starting with Quaker Mill and ending with the North Tunnel, they are the projects that will mitigate. And they're the estimated cost. For most part, these are estimated costs for what it will cost to put these projects in the ground. Now, it totals $148.6 million. Now, this is not to be done in 1 year or even 5 years. This is probably, at best, this is going to be, even though we published it to be a 5-year plan, I think that was overly ambitious. This is probably at best an 8-year plan, a 10-year plan. But it is out there to be done. Now, if we do accomplish this, if we are able to get these projects funded and put in the ground, then we look at these water depths and based on the modeling that we did. And for a 100-year storm, which is the benchmark storm that we use in hydraulics. If we get that storm and we put it through the model, we'll have less than 1 foot of water on Main Street. That's, just a little over the curve, okay? If we get a 2016 storm event again, we'll have about 3 feet of water. Now you can say, well, 3 feet of water, that's a lot still, okay? But that's the lowest we could get it without going crazy with projects. And we've also implemented floodproofing. So the Corps of Engineers helped us with what we call dry floodproofing. And so we can protect buildings through dry floodproofing means up to a depth of 3 to 4 feet. So that became the target that we wanted to hit for the 2016 storm.
Hey, Mark,
Yes.
any consideration for P3s on these projects?
Yes. Yes.
Public-private partnerships?
And I will talk about that in a second. Now, if we have a 2018 event, that type of storm, we'll have less than 1 foot of water on Main Street. All of them are very manageable depths of water compared to what we experience, okay? But the next thing is, well, how do you fund it? It seems like a lot. How do you fund it? There must be a lot of opportunities out there to fund it. And of course, the first one is FEMA. And that's the one that we rely on the most. But what usually that's during the recovery effort, that's a 75-25 split, okay? And it happens, and they reimburse after you spent the money. So you need to have the money in place. You spend your $100,000, they give you $75,000, and then you end up paying the $25,000. They do have hazardous mitigation grants, which are forward-thinking, and that would fund a portion of these capital projects. So, but they don't fund those projects 75-25. You put in, you have to show your cost-benefit ratio on the projects, and then they have a pot of money, they have a bucket, and they have to spread that bucket out, and then they give you certain amounts. You're in competition with other projects in your state, you're in competition with other states. So a lot of times when you hear about flooding in Houston, you hear about flooding in Louisiana, you hear about flooding in West Virginia, we're fighting for those same dollars. NRCS, which is a Natural Resource Conservation Service, yes.
What's the expected, cost recovery from FEMA mitigation? I mean, it can approach 25 to 50% in some projects. So what are you planning budgetarily on that?
So with FEMA, the recovery effort.
No, the mitigation effort.
The mitigation. So, well, that's a very good question. And I'll answer it this way. Because it's competitive in nature, and because it's based on the cost-benefit ratios, and you're in competition with everyone across the country to get that money, we say, well, we would like to get $1 million for this. We would like to get $5 million for this. But then as it ends up, they turn around and they say, we'll award you $1 million. You asked for $5 million, we'll award you $1 million. So we never turn it down. But we try to cobble together, so they don't pay 100%. They won't pay 50%. They pay what they have their own metric and of how they evaluate and their own algorithm on how they evaluate projects, and then you get the money for that. That's how it's done. So another federal organization is the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and they function somewhat like FEMA. There are differences in the way they fund, but it's 75-25. Now you could take a restoration project, they fund 75-25, and we're using that organization, that agency as well. They also have their preventative funds that are competitive, and we apply for grants there as well. WIFIA, which is the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, It's funny, you get used to saying WIFIA. At first, it was like, that's such an odd word. So I can only imagine what it sounds like to you now, you know. But now I'm so used to it. Now this looks like a really promising program. This is through EPA, and they will fund, finance, which, and thank you so much for that, because that's a financing program, it's not a funding program. They will finance up to 49% of a project. The local has to show 51%. So that's, the difference is that is a financing program, not a funding program. It's not a grant. So then you have that 51% that you have to find some other way to fund. There are other federal programs that are very, very numerous. Some of them are through federal highway even, but there's small amounts of money.
I have a question, I'm sorry, on FEMA, before we go off of this, you said that obviously FEMA does not give a forward fund and then we get reimbursement. Can you give us the numbers of what we've received from FEMA from the first two floods and what we're expecting to hopefully get?
Yes, we have that, right? We do.
Thank you.
There's also the state. We can go directly to the state, and we have, and they've provided some funding, but we have $148 million to fund, and usually we get about $1 million to a few $1 million from them.
One thing Mark and I want to clarify, in terms of FEMA money, even you talk about potentially qualified, not only there's issue about whether they have the funding to provide us and also income, but also not all the components, actually a large portion of the components of these, let's say, the sound plan are not necessarily qualified.
Right, well, there's two ways to think. I think the easiest way is to explain FEMA has two programs. One is restoration after the flood, and that's a 75-25. And that's usually a replacement like in kind. So for the Ellicott Mills culvert, they would pay for those elements that remain the same. If we wanted to improve it, and we did improve it, then the amount of money that increment of money for the improvement is not included in the FEMA reimbursement, okay? Only what was there only what was there and what was there, the cost of that, that's the only thing that we get reimbursed for. They have other programs, so that's a limitation. They have other programs that are more proactive, where communities can work to mitigate hazardous mitigation grants. That's like another side of their house altogether. It's not recovery, it's planning, engineering, and construction for a future. The money there is not as plentiful, and that's where I was talking about. We actually just received $1 million to do one of the projects. We were just awarded yesterday that we will be receiving about $1 million for one of our projects. So it will definitely help. The state usually gives us some money, and of course, whatever the funding gap is falls to the local. And so, that's where the rubber really meets the road. None of these agencies, they provide a percentage, and in some cases, they only finance. But it's really up to the local government, the local jurisdiction, to be able to look at that funding and see what can be provided.
One question.
Yes.
Can you stack these benefits where if WIFI only does a 50% funding or financing and you get a 50% FEMA grant, does that
Yes.
50% FEMA grant count against or count to your benefit for the WIFI financing?
I believe so. Now, I'm not an expert in the ins and outs of WIFIA. It's a relatively new program that it's been around for a little while. There are some limitations, but I believe that, yes, if we had a grant, it could be, we could take 49% that
That's the
Whitfield would
equity
give us.
against the Whitfield.
Right.
And the second
Would I be
question,
correct in saying that?
I think so.
Yeah.
the second question is, could the county issue a revenue bond against a FEMA grant? Where the revenue bond is repaid by the FEMA grant?
I don't believe so. Holly?
We'll have to check. Yeah, we'll have to check that. That's a good question.
Looking at the chart you had up there earlier, those 8 projects, I'm making the assumption that those projects, they're phased for the greatest prevention given that this is a long-term project, long-term effort. What I'm saying is that we are hoping that those projects we won't be repeating ourselves if something happens sooner than us completing this.
Right, and that's a question or a concern that I hear all the time in public meetings. And so let me first start by saying that the way that we really want to approach these is to start all the way downstream and work our way up, okay? Because you don't want to do an improvement at the top and then, force more water because you've improved conveyance. Before the downstream can receive the conveyance, right? So you want to start with your improvements downstream and work your way up. Now, we did model the order that we wanted to do the projects. And we saw the incremental changes each project would make. And that was something we had to do for the Corps of Engineers. In order to get a permit, we have to get a permit through Maryland Department of Environment and Corps of Engineers. It's a joint permit. We have to get that before we can actually do the work in a waterway. So one of the things that they wanted to see was, well, show us the order that you want to do it, show us the incremental difference that each project contributes to the whole. So that's we've done that, and we're trying to order the projects in that way, the best that we can. Now, of course, Ellicott Mills, that culvert under the road, I mean, we had to rebuild the road. Well, that's in the middle, right? But that was immediate, had to be done. And we weren't going to just put back a 9-foot pipe that we knew would fail if it was a bigger storm, so we put a much larger structure in. We kind of knew what we wanted already, and we put the larger structure in, but then we restricted it, okay? So we put we didn't open that pipe under Ellicott Mills, we didn't open it up, so it's equivalent to its full capacity. It's equivalent to that 9-foot pipe, okay? But when we get the downstream, when the downstream is ready to receive the water, then we'll open up Ellicott Mills so that it will be the full, I think it's 24 feet wide, okay? So, and the last part of that I have to tell people is there is no one project that's a magic bullet. There's no one project that we can do that will make everything better or mitigate things down to a level where, it's bearable. So while we do this, in the 5 years that we do this, in the 8 years or 10 years that it takes us to do this, there will always be a chance that we will have a reoccurrence of a storm like 2016 or 2018, and the community is not as protected. So time is of the essence. And there are some projects that are going to be, like, for example, the North Tunnel. There are some projects that are going to give you the most bang for the buck immediately. The North Tunnel diverts probably a third of the water, if not more than a third, up to a half. Diverts about a third to a half away from Main Street. So, and puts it directly into the Patapsco. So, the North Tunnel, we're moving on that right away. Okay, Maryland Avenue culverts. And I didn't include any pictures of projects, but this is a project, the Tiber, if you're familiar with it, it's only 20 feet wide that goes into the Patapsco River. And it drains 3.5 square miles. So the water from 3.5 square miles has to fit into a 20-foot wide conveyance. And so we know that that's no good. We need something redundant. We need to double the capacity. And so the Maryland Avenue Culverts does that, gives us another outlet. And so that's one of the first projects that we did. Okay. So, and Craig, you mentioned P3. So there are many different contract methods to accomplish this. And a P3 is a private-public partnership. And that's where you develop a performance standard of what you want to happen. And you put that out as your request for proposal. You might pre-qualify with a request for qualifications first. You shortlist firms, then you put out your request for proposal. And in that proposal, you say, I wanted to do X, Y, and Z. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm just telling you that this is the result that we need. So you put that on the street. And you get, and we want you to fund it. Okay? So it's a financing piece involved with that. So the county, theoretically, the county doesn't necessarily have to pay for it until it's delivered. So the design and the construction is all on the developer to build it. And then at the time of delivery, the county then has to start paying for it. And it may pay for it over a term, 20 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. And it pays the developer. And it might be a maintenance cost, like it'll be whatever the capitalization was, plus interest, plus a maintenance fee to make sure that whatever they built, the asset that they built, is maintained properly. So the county pays this. It's a yearly annual payment, and then the term is set. You agree up front. You borrow that money or the developer borrows the money at the best rate that he can get, which we always assume it's going to be higher than what we could borrow. Okay, but when you do your analysis, when we would do our analysis, we would evaluate, well, is it to our benefit to pay this extra money for this money and get this project done than it is for us to try and do it ourselves. So in this particular example, these 8 projects, the second one, the T1 dry pond, T1 stands for Tiber 1, it's the Tiber, and it's $28 million. Now that's included in there. I mean, we would have to pay that $28 million for this pond. That one was considered for a P3. And we're still considering it as a P3. We haven't solicited for the developer yet, but that is one of the projects that we would do. Now, one of the nice things about it is that you don't have to have $28 million in your back pocket to start to get this done. And so it can make an expensive project more affordable. And for example, the courthouse is being done as a P3. Okay. But there are things to think about and decisions to be made. And so this plan on when these projects will be funded, when these projects will be done, and the methodology that will be used are still kind of in the air. So
will there be a 2020, fiscal 2021 capital laid out for these projects?
Yes.
And there will be a schedule for 21 through, you said, roughly 8 years probably to get them all done?
That's correct. And the reason why I didn't necessarily show that is because we're in the process right now. right? So anything that
I understand that.
Yeah.
From our perspective, as we're working through from a total, just to have an idea of, understanding it's going to be long-term, but having no idea of, is it $50 million in 2021? Is it $15 million in 2021? Doesn't help us kind of group all of those things together from all the other competing issues as well. So is there, do you have no idea what that fiscal 2021 impact will be?
I think we will. Most definitely will, because we'll have.
Will you?
When? Not today.
I do like a few weeks,
It's
right?
all depends how
How
much
about
is available as well.
by early February?
More than likely.
Before it goes blank?
Yes, more than likely. I mean,
Just so the committee has, you know, as we're looking at all these competing interests,
right.
it's helpful for us to understand if we're talking about recommending, you know, debt issuance, of what is needed to do stuff like this.
Yes. And so my main purpose really was to show you the total.
Yeah.
And realize that it's somewhat still being formulated because there are a lot of requests right now that Holly is going through and the executive is going through. And so, you know, a lot of the sausage still needs to be ground up. So, so that it's somewhat premature, but the full amount and what projects would go first, I think you would have an idea of that.
An accounting or a bookkeeping issue, if the county funds it themselves through bond issuances, it obviously counts against the county's capital budget. If the county signs a P3 contract, does it still count against the capital budget, or is it just a county contract?
It is actually, it's interesting, but because P3 now getting more being aware of in the United States, the credit rating agency currently, we treat it, even it doesn't show as debt of the county, it's more like a multi-year contract, but credit rating agency are going to treat them as debt. Because, and they have different methodology on how to quantify on that, but all of them are going to treat them as debt. And the other thing to point it out, that, for the time's sake, Mark, we need to keep rolling just a lot of part on that, but this is a very important project for the county and clearly very expensive, but it's needed. And the funding source, a lot of part we're still working with different parties and from financing and potential reimbursement, but I want to tell you that the majority of the funding, and a big majority of funding is going to come from the county, not only upfront, but actually eventually majority of that. But we'll find different ways for financing, in terms of timing, and whatever assistance we can get from the state of federal. But other than that, we don't have too much concrete number just for FY21. We will, if we have more information, we will show it.
And the last thing I wanted to show you, just, and I used a color slide. If you notice, I used all black and white before. But this is good news, but the watershed restoration.
Really artistic.
The watershed restoration, you know, this was a program that is state mandated to clean up the bay, and we do it locally by reducing nutrients in each of the counties. And but what we've, so it is, just so you have some background, established by EPA to reduce pollutants to the Chesapeake Bay, mandated by the state, and through what's called the Municipal Separated Storm Sewer Discharge Permit, the MS4. This was partially funded by the Watershed Protection, Fund, which we are still collecting. And in the last 5 years of this permit, we can say that we did meet the goals of this program. Some of our other neighboring jurisdictions did not. It wasn't because of money, it was because they just couldn't finish. We were able to finish on time, and so I want to bring that up, that we actually did make it. It cost us $150 million, approximately 150, could be a little bit more, over that 5-year period to meet the goals. And of course, now we're negotiating, well, I call it negotiation, but we're not really negotiating with the state. But they're developing a new permit It's a new permit cycle, another 5-year permit that will go forward from 2020. We should be in the first year this year, and we'll go into 2025. We don't know what's in that permit yet. We haven't priced out that permit, but I doubt if it's going to be any cheaper over the 5 years than it has been in the previous 5 years. And so it was at least $150 million. The watershed fund, and that $150 million does not include the contribution from the fund. That came straight from the capital budget. So that, it's a mandated, state mandated requirement. If we don't hit the permit and we don't get an extension, we get the state comes in, takes legal action. They can do everything from fine us per day to take our development rights away, to many other things that they have not even explored yet, but they do have in their toolbox to get you to comply. So it is out there. It is going to be a priority for us to fund it to some level, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention today so that, you know, a reminder that it does loom out there. And that was it.
I have a follow-up question on the P3. For, if the partner secures the funding to finance the project, is that amount included in the county's debt capacity calculations? If the credit rating agencies are considering that as far as their review.
Right.
Yes, they count it as overall outstanding debt. They will.
And, well, for county purposes, is it included in the debt capacity calculation?
Okay, so if we talk about the county's own debt payment on that, then the calculation is not there. But if we talk about the treatment of credit rating agency about how much the county's liabilities there, they add that piece into it.
The former. The debt capacity calculation is not what you're obligated or considered obligated today.
Correct.
But what is considered in the debt capacity, how much, if you're spending affordability, is looking at how much capacity, how much debt you have.
Oh, yeah. No, we do account for that. So if, for example, it's if it's money coming from the county, it is money coming from the county. And no matter you pay it through the annual payment or through debt service there, it's occupied the resources are not only financed by like on the annual operating budget. So we account for that in our overall calculation. And even some of the other borrowing, like if we do the retail loans, then we borrow in different way of financing, not GU bonds anymore, we will still account it for in some manner, so we can show that our obligation and how much is occupied our overall capacity. Thank you, Mark.
Can I have a quick question regarding the Ellicott City flooding, Colin?
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So, I don't want to assume anything, but do we have a total cost for the mitigation? This, I believe, I would assume is only your department, but I assume there are other costs that are involved for mitigation of the flooding, and some may be in the capital side, some may be in the operating side. Is there any way for us to see what that is and to see and project out what those needs are going to be?
So I think most of the costs are in the capital. We put most of the costs in the capital that we would be, that the county would be responsible for. Now, if there was if they decided that they wanted a grant program that they haven't thought of yet, or if it's going to be some type of, some other way for businesses to be helped, then, you know, I don't know if they would put that in operating or if it would go into the capital. But right now, as it stands right now, this is, that 148 is the amount of money for the mitigation and restoration of our piece, the county piece, the public piece.
Okay, so for example, purchasing of buildings in Old Ellicott City, that number is rolled up in the 148, or is that number somewhere else?
Although, it is in the capital, but it's not, is this portion of capital. That was in a previous year, when it was appropriated was already spent. The total cost, if you're asking for what the total cost, we could get that for you, but this is the projected cost to us moving forward.
Good morning, I'm Jim Urban, Public Works, and Chris Jaguaropoulos, Manager of Highways.
Like look at China.
We're going to talk about the highway system needs in the county. Chris can probably do a better job than I can at this, because he lives and breathes this on a daily basis. And I'm sure this is not a topic of your dinner conversations as to what the condition of our highway system is, but I want to just give you, we've done this before in the past. And what we do is there is a systemic process that we use to go out and assess our highway system, which is every couple of years we go out and visit every highway in the county. We have a piece of equipment that rates the condition of the pavement. We come up with an assessment, which is what all this paper that I give you is kind of a report card on where our system is. We have just almost 1,100 miles of road in the county, and typically paving lasts about 20 years, and then it starts to have problems. So when we do this assessment, we take a look at what's the situation, and we have an index that we use. The report card is basically 80 is a really good number, like just in the schools, and that's kind of where we want to be. And our numbers here are dropping, which is the black line here. This is the condition. We're down in the below 80s and the 70s. It's been dropping for a number of years. And that's basically a reflection of how much funding we've gotten over the last few years to do resurfacing. We got this year, we got $5 million to do paving. And the next slide, which is give you the real, this is if we want to fix every piece of road in the county and go on that index up to 100. This is how much money we need to spend to do this. So typically, though, it's our paving budget probably needs to be 5 to 10 times what we're using on that. That again, that is in your packet here too. So the basic quandary that we have is that historically road resurfacing is like the equalizer when the budget's done. That's kind of the last draw. So how much money's left? That's where everything gets balanced. So there have been years with no money at all in resurfacing, and probably the best we've ever done is $12 million has been a really, really good year for us, and that's few and far between.
I can add a little bit on the funding constraint on that there, and Jim is absolutely right there. If you look at the first page there, it has the investment, even with doing our best there, it has not been keeping up with the deterioration, because the inventory actually, compared to 2015, it's like 43 million.
Right.
Inventory now is 53 as of last year. And the source of the funding is primarily, if we have the cumulative surplus from prior year in the general fund, and we try to use some of the PAYGO funding out of that as one-time funding towards that. But so far, even the needs of the lot, often we have to constrain it to close to 5 million, which is not enough. So it's our hope if there any PAYGO, that's our highest priority. But obviously, it's going to compete with other needs.
So what happens when you don't resurface some roads, they start to break up and you get potholes and cracking. And at some point, you go from just having to resurface the road to rebuild the road. So
more costly.
It's a huge expense to reconstruct the road, but we don't want to ever get in that position. But the way things are looking, we may end up getting to that point sometime later down the road once we change our funding model. Again, as Holly said, it's PAYGO money. There's been debate over the years about whether we should use bond funds. That policy decision so far today is not to do that. And so we're forced with looking at alternative types of maintenance programs, which like crack sealing, but also the surface coat, which is the more just a surface overlay, which for a lot of people in the community don't like that because of it's a shorter term, and also the biking advocates are not very happy with the surface texture of using those. But those are the types of things we get forced into doing. We don't have the overlay money to do that. So the other problem too is that our highway system where we are in the county, we just resurface the road, we have to do a lot more than just fix the paving. We're required, to, anytime you touch a roadway, you have to bring it up to the current ADA standards. So if the ramps are not in at the intersections, we have to replace all that. If there's any curb and gutters that are broken, we replace that, or the drainage systems. We try to fix those at the same time so we don't have to come back and dig the road up. So the challenge that Chris and his staff have is to how to strategically use this money in the best manner as we possibly can, given the huge backlog we have. We're also in the complete street mode now, so we have another challenge to try to, when we do these roads, there's a lot of pressure on to get bike lanes on our county roadways. So we look at our resurfacing program as a strategic tool to help implement the complete streets program. So that's another ongoing effort as part of this. We're required to have community meetings when we take a road and narrow it somewhat and put bike lanes on it. So a lot of people like it, some people hate it. So there's another process we have to go through to try to get to the consensus on which streets to take care of. So it's a difficult, it's a challenging situation that, again, we've given you a lot of data that, again, you probably don't want to read, but it's not a rosy picture. And it's a real challenge, and it's something at some point we can't just keep pushing the can down the road. So there's a quick snapshot of anything else you want.
Well, just to add to what Jim was talking about, we have roughly about, let's say, 1,100 miles of roadway in the county, and the lifespan of a roadway is 20 years. And if you divide 1,100 miles by 20 years, maybe we should be paving about 54, 55 miles every year. And the last 3 years or 4 years, we've been averaging about 14 or 15 miles. So during that time frame, these other 40 miles of roadway that we didn't pave is continuing to deteriorate. So stuff is happening while we're not able to keep up. There's more potholes that we're noticing. 2017, so I went back and looked at how many potholes we fixed in 2017. There's roughly about 320 potholes that we fixed in 2017. 2018, that number jumped up to about 600, a little over 600. And in 2019, we fixed about 800 potholes. So it's kind of like an indication of where we are, how things are getting over the years. The last 3 years, the number went from 320 to 800 pothole repair. The other aspect is, even with the $5 million budget that we've been getting the last few years, we program certain number of roadways to be paved every year using that $5 million. One of the things you'll see in your package is a backlog of roadways that we anticipated to pave using that $5 million that we couldn't pave, because when we go to repave a road, our intention is to take the top coat of a roadway, like a 1 inch or 2 inches of the paving surface, and just put new surface on top. But when we go to take the top 2 inches off, we realize there's other problems underneath that 2 inches, so we had to fix more things. So the $5 million is not going as far as we anticipated to go. So that's why we're having more backlogs. I still have roadways that we thought we were going to pave in FY18 that haven't completed yet. I'm still trying to keep up with those roadways. So about 5 years ago, we came up with a 5-year plan. And when I go back and look at FY17 through FY20, I have a backlog of about $8 million of roadway. In FY21, if you get $5 million, I won't be able to do any of the FY21 roadways. I'll still be doing roadways that we planned on doing the last 4 years or so. So
I think the key, the takeaway is that we have a very objective process to kind of rate what we have and prioritize the roads based on the actual condition of the paving. So it's a pretty scientific process, and but it's a pretty, and again, the challenge is, what do you do? We're not going to do the overlay at the level we have. We're going to be forced to do some of these other remedial methods to kind of preserve the pavement as long as we can, and that's not very well received in the community. The bulk of our roads are residential streets, so if you're talking about people's in front of their homes, the cul-de-sacs, the collectors going into the neighborhoods, that's the bulk of our system, and that's where all the problems really are at this point in time. And I just wanted to, we talked about the P3, just for those few survivors from the previous spending affordability, talking about the courthouse project, We got a number of national awards from the P3 organization, one of the best projects in the country, and we're really proud about that. The awards are out here in the lobby, but actually the courthouse is going to have a topping out ceremony probably in about a week, so all the structural steel will be up in place, and floors are being poured, and the wall panels are starting to go up, so it's a pretty, you can really see how the character, what the building's going to start to look like, and we're hopeful in about a year and a half will be open for service, so it's going along really well. We really took a lot of work to get everybody on board with the P3, but it's been a really good project, and everybody's working closely to get the building done in a timely manner. So you all played a great role. Those of you who were involved played a significant role in helping the county make that decision. So thank you for doing that. So we could talk about public works for many days. I know you don't want to do that because the question is back, sir.
When was the last time the road excise tax changed? And could you also talk about how the adequate public facilities ordinance works in this process?
The road excise tax was passed in state law, I guess 15 to 20 years ago. It was never raised for a number of years, many years until about the last couple of years where there's an you can index the fund based on the CPI. So we've started to do that recently, but it hasn't changed the bottom line. We've completely leveraged out the excise tax. And historically, that's what we use to build new roads in the county. So it's never for maintenance, it's never for operations and capacity improvements. The bulk of the money went to the interchanges with state-county partnerships on 29 and 32. Also on 100 is Snowden River, and 100 is another one that was built with the state money and the excise tax. We have probably $50 to $100 million in potential road projects that we can't do because we don't have the money, particularly Snowden River Parkway. We need to build an interchange at Marriottsville and 70, which is a very big ticket project. Can't do that. There's a lot of other widening projects, intersection improvements throughout the county. We just don't have the revenue for. The excise tax is collected at the building permit stage. It's based on how many square foot, per square foot of improvement in the project. So we go over here to get your building permit, we calculate how many square feet you have and apply the applicable rates to the charge you pay. But we try to leverage the money, and so we issued bonds, and the excise tax was used to pay off those bonds. So that was to try to facilitate those projects that have been built today. So it's a huge problem. The indexing of the number will not solve the problem. It has to be significantly raised or a discussion about how else to deal with that. So at this point, there's not going to be any significant new highway projects until we come up with a funding mechanism. It's just very difficult to ask for the GO bonds to pay for road improvements with all the other things that you're hearing about, particularly with the school system getting the lion's share of that revenue source.
What about the adequate public facilities ordinance?
The adequate public facilities is that each project that comes through the county has to do a road test. And basically, you analyze the intersections around where you're proposing to develop. And if the road capacity, the intersections fail, you go down below a D, they have to provide a mitigation plan, which is typically lane improvements or turn lanes or slight extensions to get past the people through the interchange. And again, but they're not required to pay for grade separated or major arterial projects with that. So it's just basically the intersections are tested, and then they have to mitigate those based on what their traffic is as part of that project. But that's just a relatively small part of the bigger network issue.
So I'm asking that because you mentioned that the number of potholes that are being repaired are increasing every year, and if to a certain extent these tests are checking demand, it sounds like there are some issues in assessing the level of service of these roads that leads to the increase in number of potholes and the need to repair them every year. Would that be an accurate statement?
That's adequate, but there's a lot more to this, and again, we could spend all day with. Theoretically, we're supposed to get gas tax revenue. When you fill up your car, you pay gas tax, that money goes to the state, and we're supposed to get reimbursed back from the state. The General Assembly, in its wisdom, took that revenue stream away from the local jurisdictions during the fiscal crunch about 10 years ago. So it's never really been restored at the county level, so we've had to, that's another revenue that was lost and would help pay for road maintenance. So that's always been the debate, is we have this argument about how do you pay for roads. The policy right now is to pay through the gas tax for operations and improvements at the federal and state level. And again, we don't get much of that money anymore. So we rely on the general fund and also the improvements that come through the subdivision.
State funding and highway user revenue during their last fiscal challenge and probably cut all counties dramatically, like 15 million, and never recovered. Recent years we have a little increase, but never.
It's relatively insignificant in terms of what we actually pay.
And is there any discussion of reinstating that?
The state reinstated it for the municipalities, the local towns. They did not reinstate it for the local governments. It's Maryland Association of Counties uses this as a big issue, but it seems to be a dead issue used right now.
The 1,100 miles exclude all of the state roads.
State roads.
104, 103.
The state roads are roads with numbers on them. That's the simple thing. These are just, again, bulk of these are residential streets. Obviously, Snowden River Parkway and roads like that are the county system, but typically it's the subdivision roads. And people get pretty fired up about it. They say, what's wrong? Aren't you out here taking care of our roads?
Those are these all over the country.
And just to give you a rough idea, State Highway has about 180 miles of roadway in Howard County. And when you look at statewide, there's more local roads than state roads. There are the primary roads, primary arterials that connect, but in Howard County it's about 180 miles.
Just a quick, Jim, this problem's not unique to Howard County. What are others doing, whether in the state of Maryland or nationally, when it comes to this problem? Because you read about it all the time.
Well, it's pretty self-evident. Just to go out and take a ride, get in your car and drive into the city or just across the country. It's a national problem. And people are, the alternative is to try other types of paving solutions, which are not popular. I don't think they're viable in this community. It's just people are not willing to accept tar and chip roads. We started off many years ago with that. That's about the only other option we have. And people are going to have to make choices as to what's important to them. Is it the road system? And as much as we have all these wonderful facilities, if you can't get to someplace in a safe manner, because it's a self-defeating prophecy.
Can't get to the new library.
We can only do like 2 quick minutes. Go ahead.
Are all of the aspects of complete streets reflected in those numbers, or is it just the roadway?
That's just the physical inventory that we try to do with the resurfacing program to accommodate complete streets. There's a whole other huge tier of wants and needs for complete streets, which is going to be part of the capital budget process. I think we'll be looking at $3 to $5 million a year just to try to take care of that, plus sidewalk.
I just had a quick question about the road excise tax. You said was based on square footage. Is that regardless of whether roads are designated as private versus public? Because there's a lot of infill and HOA communities that have private roads.
It's strictly
based on square
building
footage.
permit. It has nothing to do with kind of
So, Mark, can you come up? Keep asking, but you didn't switch there.
You mentioned Snowden River Parkway. So there was the recent lane expansion.
Right.
I have a question about how the funds are allocated. The initial cost was around $130,000, and based on the studies, there was an impact test performed, and 10% of that was allocated to the local, the entity that led to this lane expansion, whereas the recent estimate was like 750,000. Does that cost get increased, reallocated, in other words, from the 13,000 initially to?
Well, we realized Stone River Park, everybody drives, particularly during rush hour, it's a huge problem, it's difficult. And so we don't, again, we can't afford at this point to do all the things we'd like to do, so we did that as a breakout project. Part of that was because of the development basically not seeing any contributions to the mitigation, but again, that's what we could afford. There's about 2 or 3 other ones we're trying to do, but it doesn't solve the basic problem of additional lane capacity needed to Stone River Park. I could talk to you more about that afterwards. Mark Strombo is our, I think the situation with the road system is in poor shape. Mark is going to do the cleanup of our facilities and the challenges we face with our county buildings, which put in this room.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, my name is Mark Stromdahl, Chief of the Bureau of Facilities. And just a word, so facilities is one of the 5 bureaus in DPW, as we've already heard from Highways and Environmental Services this morning. And in the Bureau, we maintain, operate, and design and manage design and construction of all county public buildings. We don't do schools, so we do libraries. In our inventory, we have about 175 buildings, about 2.4 million square feet. We also provide security and custodial services. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is we have a systemic project fund that we do a variety of projects out of, and our request for this year is about $9 million. And so projects that, a variety of projects we would propose doing, regulatory repairs, we have facilities projects, and also some projects for recreation and parks. So we request about $1 million for unplanned renovations, which is sort of a contingent fund for us. And for instance, in the last year or 2, we've had emergency HVAC replacements at Glenwood Community Center and the Grassroots Center, where something was broken. We've had to be quickly to fix it. This year, we're doing some work anticipated at Long Reach Village Center, and also we're involved with downtown funded projects using some consultants down there. So that contingency covers that sort of thing. We've also requested, and this gets to what Jim was alluding to, $2.5 million in what I'm calling capital maintenance, and that's a combination of capital renewal and some small capital projects, and also deferred maintenance. So in our systemic, these are some planned projects for this year. We don't have as many as we've had in prior years, which is one reason we're hoping we can do more as far as deferred maintenance goes. But and these are listed in order of priority just in case we don't get everything we ask for. This is a list of projects. These have to be for recreation and park. This is another line item in our systemic budget. Again, they're listed in order of priority, and just to give an example. So the ones that are at the top are pretty critical. So Belmont Manor, which many of you may have been there for weddings or other social occasions, very nice facility. Reckon Parks operates in Elkridge, but we've been limping along for several years on the heating and cooling system there. So we have a planned project to replace all that with the geothermal system. that's something we're in the process of, it's been designed in many construction bids right now. We do work for all county agencies, it's just that we have funding for those and other projects. Recreation parks, these projects are in our system of projects. So capital maintenance, as I mentioned before, we maintain about 175 buildings, and starting in around 2016, we began a systematic process of obtaining facility condition assessments with an engineering firm. And so of the 175 buildings, we've gotten 129, which really covers the major buildings. So a lot of the buildings are small, and a lot of the buildings are based on the radio pattern stuff. So 129 gives a pretty good database of what it is we need to do. And this is projected out through 2030, and that's based on the life cycle of various building components. So, so you can see each year we have gotten some of the projects done for earlier years, but we're falling behind. That's why we're asking for more money this year, and we weren't able to do anything in this deferred maintenance and capital renewal schedule. By 2030, we would be about $49–50 million behind. And I included this could be quite boring to go through, but just to get a sense of texture. So there are hundreds of these line items. These are all a list of many different projects that are contained in that, rolled up into that other spreadsheet. So for instance, you can see these are estimates, these are costs. The one where we've listed costs, those are projects that we've actually done. For instance, putting in walking docks into animal control. Like I say, there's hundreds of these. And this is a tabulation of starting again in about 2016, the projects that we've managed to take off the list. And that list looks up. It started out in there, consultant generated it, but as time is going on, of course, we get things done and we take them off. There are shortfalls, shortcomings developed, and we add them to the list. So you can see it's not nothing. We've gotten about $3 million done, but there's many millions more to do. So this project, I'm talking about, this is the detention center, and our request is about $4 million this year. So I'll just run through a couple of slides here. So I already know. I just want to show some of the conditions there. So now I'll talk more about the history. So hopefully you've been to Belmont Manor, and hopefully you haven't been to the detention. But the detention center of the building is, it was added on to by its third, about 30–40 years old, and it's, as you can see from these pictures, these are cell block windows, which of course have to be secure. They're very they themselves are, quite substantial, but then as opposed to the typical windows in your house, these are tied into the wall, with substantial steel framing, and you can see the condition of these. One of the projects which I'll show you is that we placed these in a couple of different phases. And actually you can see the condition of these walls. This concrete masonry is, we've had some issues with the faces of the blocks falling off, and if we continue to just maintain this existing building, I imagine we'll have a project that faces the entire building with steel panels at the same time. So this is a project that's ongoing right now. The kitchen, condition of the kitchen equipment and infrastructure had deteriorated to the point to where we're replacing the entire kitchen. So the slide, the image on the left is what it looked like after we removed the concrete slab. And we had to dig down, we knew there was some really deteriorated sewer lines and stuff underneath all that, so I mean, it was quite a bit of work to get up. And that picture on the right is, you know, what it looks like as we're bringing it back. So that is the new floor, and that's another project you'll see when we get to it here. This is the roof. We have a project to replace the roof. You can see there's some green stuff here. This is not a green roof, okay? So that's not supposed to be there, but this project is to start. So, thing with the detention center, we had done, there was history of you know, realizing the condition of the facility. We had a very in-depth condition assessment done. And then we had a project which started out as a potential addition and renovation, and as that evolved, it became a project to completely replace the detention center. And I could go into a lot of details about why that is, but basically it's very hard adding on to a line because you have to keep it operating at the same time. So we had a design, it's a very tight site, and then I guess, you know, given all the various budget constraints, that project was at that time in the $70 million range. So, and there had been discussion of sort of financing that to P3, but given the tightness of funds and we go across the county, that's really sort of put on the back burner. And so we continued, we have to spend money on the detention center. There's no choice. I mean, there's regulations that we have to comply with, and the director there is a great guy, and he's not trying to build a lily, but we have to keep it functioning. So, I mean, a couple of years ago when we had that tremendous cold snap, it was like in February, I think, and we had a heck of a time, and we could barely keep a couple of the cell blocks. We could barely keep them heated. I mean, it was really touch and go whether we were going to have to move inmates out. And we took some measures that were not really energy conservative, but we did manage to keep them going. So then, as soon as we could, we had a pretty substantial project to rehab, you know, a major air handler, and that was about $300,000, and stuff like that comes up all the time. So
while Mark go to other projects there at the detention center, it was previous talk to this committee before, as Mark mentioned there are some tremendous needs there, and what we're doing currently is because understanding funding constraint quite a bias will have more time, but even so, and as Mark just mentioned that there, and this point I wanted to estimate at least $4 to $5 million, just keep the general renovation repair going, and then in the future years also need at least $15 million at a minimum just to try to maintain in a reasonable condition while waiting for a permanent solution. The permanent solution will still be needed. It's just like maybe a little bit of wait, a little bit longer, but eventually we do need the replacement. We do need a rereading, which is going to be costly on that. So that's just one picking back.
And so I already mentioned some of these projects. These actually are these that you're seeing here. These parts of it, this is what we're doing right now, which we have the money for right now. Going forward, there's a second phase of the window replacement, which is about the same as this, as $600,000 to $800,000, and then the medical suite, which is the second project. There, $200,000 covers the design, but we need, you know, another 1.5 million or more to actually do the construction. Construction in the detention center is very expensive because you can't have contractors just, you know, walking in and out. Every time they go in, their tools have to be checked by a guard. I mean, and then when we're doing demolition, say for instance, when we were taking the kitchen floor out, you know, I mean, it's a detention center, right? So moving materials out through existing doorways and stuff, the whole thing is just very costly. And we also need to have, as we make the ask, say, for $4 million, I mean, we need contingency money because you never know what's going to break. I mean, the last line here.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we talk about cover the 10%.
Okay.
We can just use a couple minutes
That's
on a
fine.
couple of other big projects
All right.
quickly.
Okay.
and then speak.
Sorry. So, this is actually the East Columbia, proposed East Columbia 50+ Center, and the library is over here. So this, the parking lot is in front, so this is kind of along the edge of the parking lot, built into the hillside that slopes to the west, I guess. And this is about a 32,000 square foot building. There's a huge amount of community activism behind this project, and one, I guess you could call it a problem, is that people here have seen the facilities that we've been involved with, like say the Elkridge 50+ Center, and the facilities are in Elkridge City, and they want a nice facility. So, and this our request this year is about $17 million. I mean, we had money previously for design and banked some for construction, and it's gone up a lot since last year. It's gone up about $4 million from our previous year's request. And the reasons for that is there's been a lot of inflation. I mean, up to 7%, say, in this area as far as construction costs goes for a year or two. We're pushing the projects, everything we're doing now, because the administration is very, very interested in energy conservation. So LEED Silver is a county ordinance requirement, but we've been pushed to do more, and so as a standard, we're trying to meet gold now with these projects, and that does have some cost. And this had some site design issues that were not evident earlier in this design. So, this is the North Laurel Community Pool Project, which is in addition to the this piece right there. This is in addition to the North Laurel Community Center. Again, this project, from the time that the community center was conceived, this swimming pool project was conceived. At that time, there wasn't enough money to build it. So there's been, we started working with Recreation Park, and it's been moving forward since. This project actually, when we scoured through it during our budget planning process, our ask for this year is about $11 million. We actually realized we thought we could give back a couple $1 million. So as far as the budget there, we actually...
This one actually cost a drop.
This one actually dropped here.
Still a lot of money.
It's still a lot of money, yeah, it's still a lot of money. Oh yeah, so this is another project we're going to talk briefly about, and we'll be done. New police facilities. There was a project which I'm sure some of you are aware of. We have done a study to build a police complex off of Cedar Lane next to Harper's Choice Middle School. And that included a new police station, it included new police headquarters. There was a property management building, which is for handling evidence, which is since chain of custody is an extremely important issue for the police, property management is an extremely important issue. So that was, again, a very expensive project, and the whole thing in sort of $80 million range. And given funding imperatives, and also sort of community something opposition, I guess we'd say, we have sort of gone in another direction, perhaps in the intermediate term anyway. So, and this is the lower level of the Warfield building, which is the main police station. This is in the records area. So the whole work area looks like this. I mean, frankly, is unbelievable, the conditions there. So this year, actually, with money we already have the money. We're doing, instead of doing this new building, we're moving police headquarters into lease space, and we have the money to do that. And the lease has been signed and it was going before the council, so.
So I think because of funding constraints, the third station we have to push further down the road, at
Right.
least for the next few years. And then, but we kind of try to do some needed needs, and so we can take care of some needed needs on the police station one after, but more request for the police station part, we have to just push back further on that reality.
So one other thing we are asking for this year is money. So when we move people out of Warfield, then we can renovate that. So we are asking for some money, like 1.75 million to do the renovation.
So what's the total of all of these requests?
Well, we have more requests. I mean, these are just sort of the highlights of our requests.
Do we have a list of everything?
I think once I have it early, we could later compile.
Okay, if we can compile it so that the committee.
But like, I think one for illustration purposes, one thing we can pull from last year's, because last year we have out years, request on that, it's not gonna change too much. But I think I think we said last time, we request total from everybody is like a 2.5 times the likely available funding
I
source.
just want the committee
We
to have
can,
awareness.
yeah, we can show that.
So that they can see.
Yeah, thank you.
They can see the 2.5.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. Our record part, and I apologize that we're rushing you and then some and enthusiasm, but I do want to try to keep the meeting around you are on that. So people have questions and let them go through the slides relatively. Again, it kind of has a lot of competing. We're not able to go over everything. We just want to pick up some highlights and then we give you some idea about that. And Sandra from ECS, thank you for bearing with us. Very patient.
No problem.
Thanks for having us. My name is Ronald, and I'm Director of Recreation and Parks. Been Director for the past 6 months, so I'm excited to be here. I believe I've been in front of the committee in the past with Tom Berg as the prior director, so we'll go ahead and move forward. I brought my three of my staff here today, Bob Lenz, Brian Mimini, and Bill Eckert. We're going to kind of tag team through this presentation. Just to give you a little background, we have a total of, this adds up to about a total of 60 parks that we have that are broken down into regional, community, neighborhood parks, natural resource areas, the historic site. We have 7 buildings that we staff: community centers, nature center, athletic center, and other community buildings. For a total of open space area in Parkland, we have close to 9,600 acres that we're responsible for managing. I know I don't have the slide here, but I just wanted to let you know that this past year we've offered over 9,000 programs in our Department of Recreation, part of our department, and we had over 85,000 residents. So that's a pretty good number. This tells you that we continue to grow. There's a demand for the facilities that we've been constructing over the years. Our recreation parks program, parks, and natural resources play a key role in the quality of life for the citizens of Howard County. It also plays a key role in making Howard County one of the best places to live. So we hope to continue that, through our budgets and all that. Over the past years, 5 or 6 years, due to budget constraints, both our operating budget and our capital funds have been reduced, especially on the operating side. You'll see through our presentation, how this has affected us and has had, us to defer projects, to the future, as well as our operating side in regard to staffing and short staffing. You'll see a few slides in that sense. We had to defer, like I said, projects, and staffing needs, throughout the last several years, and now we're trying to catch up on some of the work. I'm going to get started. If you aren't familiar with our budget sheets, please add 3 zeros to these numbers. It's not $300, it's $300,000. So this year, we're asking for a total of $7,316,000, and it's broken down into $300,000 in geo bonds, 3.8, a little over $3.8 million in grants, which is our
bond bills and urban open space funds that we received from the state. So, and then total, little over 3.1 million in T-tax. These are just a list of projects that we're closing this coming fiscal year that have been completed, or we have projects that are waiting out here, so we decided to close them for now. And we may be open them in the future. Our first project is Landare Park. If you're familiar with Landare Park, it's right off of 175. This year, we're asking for a total of $2.4 million, and it's broken down through our POS grants that we'll be receiving, hopefully this year during the legislation process. And the part of Landare Park that's funded for this year is actually, we call it Phase 6. We're down on Phase 6 as we haven't built the ramp, the bridge that goes across over to our phase up on the northern side of Landare Park. So we're kind of starting to construct a little bit in this area. Right now under construction, if you drive by there, is Phase 3 construction, which is going on right now. You can see the large playground in that area and the maintenance facility. The area that we're going to be constructing and we're funding is basically the skate park area here, the parking lot, and the basketball court area. We will not be building the large indoor athletic facility. That will be in the near, later on in the future. This is just a view of, I'm going to go back up, sorry. I just wanted to point out the operating impacts that that we have to take on during our construction projects like this. Usually a startup cost on the regional facilities is approximately $500,000. In Phase 3, when we get in Phase 3, since we're opening a maintenance facility, we would need approximately $628,000. And basically that goes back because to date, we've only received in our operating funds approximately 2 staff for this park, which on the regional part, usually we have 8 staff. So you'll see in a later slide on how that breaks out into our needs for staff. Next project, I'm going to let Bob Lenz explain the projects once I get through this list. We're asking in our systemic project a little over $1.3 million for projects that we have coming up in our systemic fund, and that will be out of T-tax. So Bob, if you can go ahead and explain. Sure.
We try to replace 2 playgrounds a year. Most of our parks are at least 20 years old. These 2 playgrounds, Savage Park, it's over 30 years old, so we've been nursing it along. We've gotten an extra 10 years out of the playground, but in future slides, when you see the rubber condition, we definitely need to replace that this year. Centennial Park, this is Centennial Newark. We've already had to close it because they don't make the parts for this playground anymore. So due to safety issues, we'll be taking this out ahead of the new fiscal year, probably in the next month. We're behind on playgrounds. We had to spend like $1.2 million in the last 2 years on unexpected bridge repairs and bridge replacements at Dunlog and Centennial Park. So we're trying to play catch up on playgrounds. The concert shell down at the south area lower, it's been sinking through the years. We need better ADA access. We're going to be building a new stage on the concert shell. As you can see on the bridge, this is Fond Hill Bridge. We did replace the red bridge at Centennial this year with an environmentally friendly fiberglass bridge. And the guys did it in-house, so we saved like $300,000. So we're going to do the same thing at Fond Hill this year if we receive the funding. You can see with the bow in this bridge, it's really aged. It's washed out twice in the last 20 years and we've replaced it, so we definitely want to replace that. Centennial Park, we've had an ongoing project that we wanted to do down. This is South Lower. The walls are over 30 years old, they're deteriorating, they're falling. The pathway does not meet ADA compliance. We're going to do an ADA parking area at the bottom, dress up a new stairs to the restrooms. So it's about a $600,000 project. We were supposed to start that this past fall, but because of the main bridge at Centennial along Centennial Lane, we had to defer that funding and use it for the bridge this spring. Resurfacing, we're asking for $1.266 million in T-tax. We're way behind in resurfacing. We've never really received the funds we need for roadways. All we can do with the funding that we receive is patch roadways. Most of our parks are over 20 years old. The lifespan on the roadways is usually 20 years, so it's going to, with funding constraints, it's going to be a long time before we can really replace total roads, but we do the best we can with the funds that we get. We got a lot of boardwalks and railing replacements. We've been keeping up with it, but School's Orchard and Fawn Hill are on this year's project list. As I mentioned, just a little bit more funding if we need it for the Centennial project. There's a large wall due to the elevations on this side that we have to build, so we may need $100,000 out of resurfacing to finish that project. Here's an example of School's Orchard Pond. That's the condition of the pathway. Environmental Services has a large pond project on Pond 3 if they receive the money this coming year, and they're going to build a little pathway work, so we figured we'd tie our project into theirs and have new pathways in that part of the park. A couple other projects with the funding. Fundings for safety drop tests on our artificial turf fields and our rubber playground surfaces. Roadway tar and chipping at our historic sites and Rockburn Park, and just trail enhancement supplies for our natural trails. Wincopin Park needs a lot of work. Rockburn, they've been improving. So just more support for that.
Troy Park at Elkridge is our next project. We're allocating about $650,000 for this project, and a portion of it's going to be out of state grants, program monthly space grant, and $166,000 for out of TTAP. Troy Park, the funding is going to go toward finalizing the bleachers and our restroom facility and our storage building on this side of the site. So, apologies, giving me the eye over, so I'll be quick. And this turf field was just installed this past year. Again, this is what we're going to be constructing. Again, this is the entire site of that facility, and again, our operating impacts. We haven't been able to receive our full staffing for this park. I believe on this facility, we have 2 or 3 people on this site as well. Historic structures, and $150,000 out of TTAX. These are just a few projects that we'll be working on. Centennial Park improvements, we're asking for $300,000 geo bonds to start our design. Centennial Park's over 30 years old, and so the facility's getting old. You'll see from these slides. We're going to redesign the whole west area of that park, and you can see these light poles aren't looking too good, so we're trying to at least get ahead of them before they start falling down on us. I think we have another 3 to 5 year lifespan on those lights, so we're in the process of trying to get a consultant on board to go ahead and get this whole area redesigned. So I don't want to go ahead and put new lights up and replace these lights and turn around and have to redesign after that. Park, the trails, pathways and trails, $250,000 out of TTAX. Again, we're working with a community group that's been at David Force Park, and we're going to be rehabbing about 2.4 miles of trails throughout natural surface trails throughout David Force Park. Again, this is David Force Park. We're rehabbing bridges, and here's the trails that exist are in pretty bad shape. And last is our land acquisition, which comes out of grants, or program open space grants, would be about $1.1 million. And here's just a shot of our organizational chart in our parks operations. And everything is green is what we're short. We're broken down into 5 zones. We used to be 4 zones. We just increased it to 5 due to Centennial being such a heavily used facility. And so you can see here, Blandare Park, we have 2 staff for Blandare Park. We just brought a third one over that used to be in charge of the Belmont area. So we're actually 4 staff short here, 2 here at Belmont, 2 here at Troy Park that I mentioned. And even going back to Western Regional back in 2005 when we opened that facility, again, we received operating funds for staffing. So what we did, we borrowed from Schooley Mill Park to open Western Regional Park, which is here, and then we're still short at that facility as well as a couple over at Savage Park. So what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, real quick, Bill Eckert to talk about the, do you have any questions?
No, we're like way over.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Well, I believe you have all.
Is the committee okay? I mean, people are leaving, so, but it's been a few hours. You guys have to.
Yeah. All right, that's fine, if you want, it's up to you, Howard.
So we do have PCS on the but one, Sandra can come over. But when he was here, when Sandra was here talked to the setup for the technology on that, Bill, do you want to just talk 1 minute about operating budget impact related to CIP?
Just real, like, one word answer. The bridge from South Blandair to North Blandair, is that state highway, is that, it has to go over 175?
We have to build it over state highways right away.
Okay.
Or fine. It's, DPW funds it for us.
So, hi, everybody. In FY '21,
Yeah, we just took it off.
Oh, you took it off?
We all have it.
so you got it?
Go ahead, no.
Okay. So in FY '21, continuation of effort, we asked for additional money for salaries. We asked for CWs, contingent workers, for horticulture, which does our mowing, for the parks. Our parks are open 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we have contingent workers who work in the evenings and the weekends, so we need more money to help run those parks to fund contingent workers. And the other thing that we need is the cost of what we budgeted for the parks early on is not enough now, considering what people in the private sector make per hour. So we need money to be able to compete with the private sector, to be able to pay people, or kids, or adults who work in the parks. We also need money for overtime, for special events, and inclement weather type activities and deer management. In contractual, we ask for money for hazardous trees. Hazardous trees is a big deal because you guys have probably, and gals have heard about the emerald ash borer. And so if there's a dead tree or a tree that's dying and it's by a residential, a home, or it's by a pathway, we have to take it out. And it costs us hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It's amazing how much we spend for hazardous trees, to replace some fitness equipment and playground repairs, and also some new parks that we have mowing. For supplies, we're looking for fleet repairs. We used to use Roundup in the parks, but we can't use that anymore. So the new herbicide is going to cost more money than the Roundup. And then some supplies for the MPA building. And then finally, we need capital type supplies for mowers and gators and paint machines and pressure washers and tractors and stuff like that. In the new efforts for FY '21, we're asking for staff for Harriet Tubman Community Center, as well as Blandair and Troy Parks, and some CW money for people to work on the weekends and after in the evenings.
I'm sorry, I
That's fine.
Okay,
that's fine.
Thank you. I
Sure.
think you highlighted the
Yeah.
biggest part on that.
There you go.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. And one thing to just emphasize is when work hard, do a lot of the projects there, and eventually a lot of those capital projects that have operating budget impact from the staffing, operating maintenance, and throughout the years they have been trying to absorb that with existing staffing and costs, and they can only do that to some extent. A lot of actually things are delayed, and they do have a more and more tight budget to address those issues.
Good morning. My name is Sandra Tallo. I work for the Department of Technology and Communication. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is about our vision. Our main goal is to connect our citizens and our workforce in a secure and stable environment. And for that, we have established some goals that is our next slide. For the citizen side, we are in the process of launching a new website, and also we are continuing to improve our service portal catalog that will help the citizens to go to the services that they need. We released our service catalog on December 19th, and our main goal was to give all the citizens a one-stop shop for all the services in the county. The other thing that we have done, we have released an RFP for the new website to try to enhance and modernize the current one. We are in this moment in the process to select the vendor. Another of our goals is to build out our fiber network to be able to meet the needs of our growing community. In these years, we are going to try to focus on improve the connectivity with the Columbia Association that will allow us to grow and get more opportunities for giving more speed in our network and Wi-Fi in the county. The other part of our goals is we are working to upgrade public safety. Right now we are working in the radio signal enhancement system. We are trying to make sure that all the radios are able to connect in our network. We are also working with the public system schools to make sure that all our radios are able to communicate in the schools, you know, with all these kind of emergencies. Also, we are upgrading the computer aid dispatch systems, so also to be able to help the citizens whenever emergency happens. And one of our main goals, of course, is to work in all our security. Security is one of our main points because as you have seen, there's always security threats. We have one in Baltimore City. So what we are doing constantly is upgrading and enhance our security tools. We are doing testings, we are doing maintenance of all our environments to make sure we cover all our security levels. We are focusing on making security cultural change in the county because we want everybody to understand that security is a priority for everybody. It's not just IT, because the main point of security is prevention. And also, as I said in our vision, we want to make everybody work in a secure and stable environment. But also we have to work and do a balance between that and allow people to do their job. Because if we put a lot of security, people, some areas cannot do their job. So that means that when we do security, we have to, in certain departments, strict, in another departments, we have, for example, police, they have to have access to different kind of websites that other people in the county cannot have, because it's that kind of job. And for us to be able to do all what I'm talking about and be able to give our main vision to work in a secure and stable environment, we are really going through these kind of challenges. As you know, IT is an industry that evolves very quickly. Then we have security costs. The security costs are mounting because the threats are increasing in the sophistication and the scope. That means that we can have a software today that will help us deal with all the threats that we have right now. But 2 weeks from now, a month from now, there's a new developed threat that our current system doesn't have. So we have to keep up and make sure and be in constant information what kind of new threats are out there and see if our current systems are available to cover that. And it's something that we have to do every day. We have to monitor everything 24/7, 365 days. And of course, with what I just said, that means that IT evolves, security threats increase. That means for us additional costs. Because if we have to take action, usually we might have to buy a new software. If we buy a new software, that might mean that we need more hardware and we have to pay a cost for implementation. And after we are done with that, then next years and the subsequent years, we're going to have impact in our operating budget because we still have to maintain that software and we have to support. And in addition to that, all this technology means that our people have to have a new set of skills because everything changed. And that also means another cost. We have to make sure that we train our people so that they can be able to support the systems, and we don't have to rely too much on consultants with this an additional cost. But as you know, all that is a learning curve, and that takes time. Security, if there's a new challenges or new threats, then also that means that we have to do security awareness training to all the county. So and we have to have a tool to be able to do those kind of trainings. So as you can see, is one comes after the other, and if we want to keep up with our vision to give everybody a secure and stable environment, we have to do a lot of this stuff, and everything have a cost. And one challenge.
Do we have an idea of what that cost is in fiscal year 2021?
We are going to give the information.
We're going to collect requests.
Yeah.
That's part of the challenge, because everybody is still in the process of developing their requests.
Well, we have it before we get.
We had last year's school out years as kind of a proxy on that too. If we can share with this group on that.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of our hardest challenges at this point is it's very hard for us to attract and keep talent. All the people that have a lot of experience in security, network, infrastructure, that is our main foundation for the IT department, are in very high demand, and we are competing with the private sector. And at this point in our department, we are losing people because they're getting better offers in the private sector. I can give an example in my case. For example, in DTCS, I'm in charge of all the business office, the budget, and I also manage the SAP system, that is the ERP, the financials, the purchasing, and utilities for the county. And I had SAP is divided in two areas, like the functional side and the technical side. And I have a person for the technical side that was in charge of all the infrastructure. He worked in the county for 11 years, the same as we start working together. And he just got a call from the private sector. He didn't even put his resume. Got a call and got an offer. I could not compete. Bonuses, training in Germany, at least twice a year, and I was tied. I could not keep him. I have to let it go, and I'm right now struggling, trying to hire somebody to replace this person. I think I have posted, at least 4 times, and not even going to the point for interviews. I'm not having candidates. So for IT, our vision looks like a straightforward, right? Be in a secure and stable environment. But in the current environment we are right now, it's hard for us, budget restrictions, and have the correct talent to be able to take us to the next step with the budget restrictions.
Sandra, thank you so much on that, and I apologize for keeping you. No problem. Yeah, and folks here, for next week, our next meeting will be on January 21st, and that's when we focus on all kinds of operating needs. Again, we'll have multiple